Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppas with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
Welcome everybody to the Human Conversation. We're episode 19 today. I have a beautiful guest with me. I met this lady in 2018, and I'm saying that because we're recording this in that kind of moment where we're crossing over into 2019 in a couple of days. So you may listen to this in 2019. So Caroline Strawson is my guest today. She is an accredited divorce and positive psychology coach. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. It really is, Jules, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on.
Oh, it's a pleasure, darling. So I met you, obviously, now I'm just trying to think, it's got to be 6 months or so ago, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it was. It was Aruna and Ali's event, I think, where I first saw you speak, wasn't it?
Oh, that would have been May. That would have been May time. Yeah. So that's even longer then. But since then, I think we've seen each other. We've talked about having coffee. We've all organised the lunch, which I never made, unfortunately. So
we'll get there.
Yeah, we still have stuff to do. But I thought how lovely to have you onto the podcast, because then we can just chat, because that's what this is all about, the human conversation. So I want to talk about a few things with you today, just because I guess I want to fill some gaps for myself, but also I want the listeners to hear all about the amazing work that you're doing. I have to say, let's try and do this logically. Let's start at the beginning. So when I met you, I think I discovered around the time that you were starting your journey as an entrepreneur, and you were doing network marketing of some sort.
Yeah, so for me, I suppose as a timeline kind of thing, my background was in the medical profession. I was actually a podiatrist.
Yes, now I remember.
So a lower limb specialist, or smelly feet, whatever you want to call it, as such. I've always loved medical things. I've always loved helping people. And for me, unfortunately, I divorced 8 years ago. And when that happened, it was a really, really acrimonious divorce, extremely acrimonious. And I was in over £70,000 worth of debt when we parted ways, of which 23,000 was in my name. I was still in the marital home. I've got 2 children at the time, but I couldn't afford anything. And I started counselling. I got diagnosed with PTSD. All of these words were being given to me, sort of emotional abuse, narcissistic behaviours, gaslighting, all of this. And I didn't actually realise what had happened in my marriage, but very quickly I realised I'd completely lost myself. So although I had PTSD, I also was suffering with depression, anxiety, self-harm. So I would start every morning sitting on my bathroom floor having a panic attack, because for me, I felt like I had no control in my life at that stage. My control was very much with my ex-partner at the time, financially, everything. And I was working part-time as a podiatrist. So the money that was coming in was not as much as the money that needed to go out. And that really stressed me, because, my 2 children were reliant upon me, and I took that really seriously. My role as a mum was my number one priority. And I suppose over those coming years, I went through various stages of being extremely angry, grieving cycle, really, like you go through when you're going through a divorce or the loss of a loved one, because divorce is actually the second most traumatic life event you will go through. So I was going through all of these stages, but obviously sinking further and further into debt. I'd have letters coming through my door. I'd put them in the bin. I didn't want to deal with them unless it was council tax, so I didn't want to go to prison. But everything else, every month I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it was literally, I was just like a stress ball, really. And when I look back, I think, gosh, it just seems like an eternity ago. But at the time, I remember thinking things like, just get your kids to 18 and, get through today. I lived very much day to day. I couldn't focus on anything beyond all of that because it felt so overwhelming. And it was a really, really tough time, really. And then for me to get into network marketing, I didn't really even know what network marketing was, to be honest. I just had seen a lady on Facebook who was seemed to be running a business around her kids. And I thought, do you know what, if I could earn even £200 a month, £50 extra a week, that would be a really, really good thing for me. So I contacted her. I joined the business. It was just under £200 to get started, of which I borrowed it off my dad, who was extremely skeptical. But I said, look, Dad, you know, even if it helps me earn that. And you'd think, being a podiatrist, I'd got a profession, I'd got a degree, you'd think I'd be okay financially. But actually that wasn't the case because of childcare costs, school holidays. If I earned more, I got less tax credits. So I was in this kind of trap and everything. And I'm not a shirker of hard work. I'd have done anything. But because my ex had moved quite a distance away, my mum had passed away, my dad was in his 70s, I'd got no support around me to help like that. So for me, I needed to find something I could do at home when the kids were in bed or whatever. So for me, network marketing ticked the boxes for me for that. So when I started, because I was suffering with anxiety, you see a lot of network marketers, they go and do parties, they go and do events. No, I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to be out of the house. So, you know, I think if I didn't have my children at the time, I'd have quite happily become an agoraphobic, very much so.
Actually, Caroline, you know, this agoraphobic thing, just while you've said it, it's very easy for that to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I had 2017 was the year I started my business, but I also lost a really, really special friend very suddenly. And I remember that feeling of, even if people asked me to go somewhere, I would just say, oh no, I can't come, sorry. Well, I could go, but I was just comfortable sat. It's like a safety place, isn't it? So I get that completely.
And I get that. And I would very often, if people would say to me to do something, I'd say yes. And then at the last minute, I'd say, oh, my daughter's ill, or this or that. There would be a reason why I couldn't go. So for me, Facebook became my best friend, to be honest, because it was a very safe environment for me to still be me. But I was at home, I was in the security of my four walls, and I could do it when the kids were in bed. Now, when I started, I did it wrong. You know, I did it very wrong. But very quickly, I love learning things. You know, I've always been a big learner. So I learned how to utilize Facebook really to build my network marketing business. And although I joined just to earn an extra £200, within 6 months, I doubled my podiatry salary as well. So I actually gave up being a podiatrist because I could see further potential, and I could do it around the children as well. So no more childcare costs, nothing. I could be, you know, the mum I wanted to be, but build this business. I was in control of that. Within a year, I was on a 6-figure income. Within 18 months, myself and my team were turning over £1 million worth of products, and I was qualifying for everything on the marketing plan as well. And I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. But I still felt like there was something missing inside of me as such, because I love helping people, which is what I was doing in the business. I was helping others build a business. But I suppose it was that meaning. There was something kind of that meaning inside. So 3 years ago, when I met my husband now, as well, I was kind of at this crossroads thinking, you know, what am I going to do? So I carried on with the network marketing, and he's a mortgage broker and a protection advisor. And he said, well, why don't you help me build my business for a bit? Because he'd seen how I built my network marketing one. And I thought, yeah, a bit of a challenge, you know, I'd enjoy doing that as well. So I built a big team then in my network marketing business. I'd got sort of over 2,500 people. So I took a step back from recruiting and just sort of supported those that I had that were sort of moving forward. And then I helped my husband start to build his business. Very much really what I'd learned in my network marketing, I sort of put into that, and that became really successful as well. But again, something inside, it wasn't lighting up inside of me. And at this time as well, again, because I love learning, I thought, you know what, I'd love to do a master's. I've always, you know, loved education. I love learning new things. And I love the subject of positive psychology. It was really kind of instrumental in helping me recover from my divorce as well. You know, because for me, you know, my ex is a narcissist as well. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, labels. He was actually diagnosed as that as well. So, you know, and very often it's not necessarily labeling your ex-partner, it's how you feel as well. You know, the PTSD or complex PTSD or narcissistic abuse syndrome, there are real traits about how you feel. So even if you don't want to label your ex, how do you feel in that relationship? How was that relationship? How were you spoken to? And et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we don't have to do that, but mine was. So, you know, recovering from a divorce or a breakup with a narcissist is unlike anything else, because it doesn't just stop. You know, when you kind of divorce from someone who is normal, so to speak, yeah, you can have arguing and a bit of acrimony and stuff, but there's still empathy at the core of it, especially as if you've got children, where there isn't with a narcissist. It's all about control, it's all about manipulation. And if you are coming from a place where you want to make everybody happy, you want to do the right thing all of the time, that's the worst thing you can do coming out of a narcissistic relationship, because you're constantly then going to be feeling depressed and sad or angry, because you can't control what they do. And ultimately you have to realize, and I always say the phrase, you know, you waiting for the apology, the acknowledgement, the validation from your ex like this is like you drinking rat poison and expecting the rat to die. It's just not going to happen. So for me, the light bulb of my healing really came from using positive psychology and realizing I don't have control over him, I have control over me, my environment, and what I can do. So when the kids were with him, which wasn't that much, and then they came back, if they were feeling sad or anything, that's what I could control, not when my children were with him. I had to let go of that, which was very hard as a mother.
I think it's a massive, massive point in anything, not just divorce, not, you know, in life, that we have a choice as to how we feel. And I think this was one of my light bulb moments years ago. I had some counselling when I was probably late 20s. And this woman said to me, because he's made me feel this, he's done this, then I did. And actually she sat and she said to me, it's up to you how you feel. And it was so gentle. And it was just this moment. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's right. I can choose how I feel. And I think this is huge, isn't it? It's huge.
It is huge, because we give our power to so many people, and not even just in relationships and that, friendships, family. And, you know, what really, really fascinated me in all of this was why do we do that? Why did that happen? And, you know, when I was going through the anger phase as well, coming out of my relationship, I was very angry at him to start with. Then I got really angry at myself. I'm an intelligent woman. How could I let that happen? How could I be in a situation like that? Because if you'd have said to me prior to my marriage, would you ever be in a situation like XYZ? I'd been like, hell no, of course not. But, you know, emotional abuse is insidious. It doesn't happen overnight. It's over a number of years. And when you're enmeshed with children, finances, and all of this, you know, it's almost like you sacrifice your own happiness because you think it's the right thing to do to keep a family together and all of that. Because, you know, I was brought up with Ladybird books, Prince Charming, fairy tales, you know, a family unit was mum, dad, and, you know, XYZ children. And that was what was the norm, and that's what it should be, you know. So for me, when I was going through my divorce and that, I felt a failure, I felt ashamed, I felt a huge amount of guilt. I thought, my God, my children are from a broken home. They're not going to have the happy childhood that I had envisioned for them and everything. And there were so many emotions whilst dealing with a still controlling ex and his new partner as well. And so there was a lot. So for me, the research came for me was looking at my own kind of story. Why did I behave like that? You know, I recognized I had patterns in friendships as well. The same type of person I was attracting into my life, where I was giving everything. Why was I doing this? You know, and I really wanted to research all of this. Coming from a medical background, I love science as well, you know, reasons why do people behave how they do. So that then got me into doing my master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, because it's a, you know, positive psychology is the scientific study of what makes people thrive, flourish, and be happy. So for years, if you said you were going to see a psychologist, for instance, and there's so much research obviously on psychology, this was always about what was wrong with people. Why was someone depressed? Why was someone suffering with anxiety? Why was people suffering with addictions as well? But there was very little study of what actually makes people happy. Is there evidence to say if people do X, Y, Z, it will make them happy? So positive psychology is a new science. It was only founded about 20 years ago now, but it looks at what makes people thrive and flourish, and they use a lot of positive psychology interventions. So things like gratitude, you know, there's different models. I use a PERMA H model of 6 different aspects of your life, and looking at those to see how you can increase your well-being, doing specific evidence-based exercise as well. So it's not kind of like a self-help or try this, do that. It's all evidence-based, because again, for me, if someone tells me to do something or I want to know why, does it work? How does it work? You know, and have everything backing it up. So when I started my master's, at this stage, I still hadn't started my divorce coaching business. And I kept thinking, I need to do something with this because I love positive psychology. And I started to think, oh, I'll be a resilience coach or a success coach because, like, you know, I've kind of come from that. And I thought, oh, do you know, there's loads of success coaches, resilient coaches, and it still didn't fit with me. And then all of a sudden I thought, someone said to me, have you thought about divorce? And I thought, is there such a thing as a divorce coach, so to speak? So I did some research and there was not many. And then I thought, okay, is there a course I can do? Is there something I can back up using my positive psychology, my personal experiences? And at this stage, there wasn't. So I started following probably two, I would say, of the most sort of prolific divorce coaches in the UK, really. One of whom had never been married, actually, and never had a divorce as well. But I liked her style of what she was doing. She'd actually practiced family law, come away from that and was doing coaching.
I think I know that lady.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought I like her style of doing it. And then there was another lady as well who actually had a global business with this as well. And I really liked that aspect. So I just started following them and seeing, you know, what were they doing? What was working? What I could then put my aspect in. Then one of them, the lady who had the global business, actually set up an accreditation. She'd been a divorce coach for about 10 years as well. So she set up an accreditation for this. And I thought, great. It was a 3-day and then obviously ongoing training afterwards. I thought, I'm going to go on that. I want to learn from the best, because then I can incorporate what I learned from her, of her experiences, incorporate my positive psychology, my personality and my experience, and create my own system then, because I'd already started to formulate really what I felt was working and what wasn't for people as well. So I went along, did all of this, and loved it. Learned so much from her as well, things that sort of fast-tracked me with things as well that I could then implement. And what I found was then, so kind of last year then, so I'd been helping Simon, and then when I was doing my master's, I thought, right, I need to plan this as a business. So I was writing a book last year about my story. So divorce became my superpower. And I put it that it was going to be launched mid-September. So prior to that, then I spent sort of 3 months softly launching, building a group on Facebook, again, utilizing online methods too, because obviously your time is only limited if you're one-to-one coaching. So I knew as well, I'd got a vision that yes, of course, I like doing one-to-one coaching, but I wanted to do one-to-many coaching. So online space and, you know, do as much as I could like that as well. Because although, yes, I wanted to help people and in that space, I'm still an entrepreneur at heart as well. So I still want to have an amazing business too. So, you know, and that was challenging actually, Jules, because what I'm doing is very much helping people in a very vulnerable time of their life, but then asking them for money, for coaching. And I had a bit of a battle in myself, I have to say, initially with that, until I realized that, okay, I just like to charge what I want to charge. I'm not getting caught up in these 10K months, this, that, or anything else. I'm going to charge what I think I'm worth, over deliver, which I always do. I think I feel comfortable with that then, because I know what value I am giving.
Well,
it kind of ticked a box in my head then.
Well, this is the word value. Okay, this is where everyone gets hung up on the price thing. So in my coaching, I lose the word price and we introduce the word value, but then we really dig deep into actually, what does that value look like? What is that value? So that actually the person selling is actually realizing their value, because I think that's half the trouble. We don't always think that we have this value, but of course we do with our knowledge. I think what's really interesting about your story to this point is that now you've come all that way to a point where you're now doing something because you have been your ideal client.
Correct. And that for me was almost turning my passion into my business. So even now I don't feel like I'm working when I'm doing any of this, because, and you're right, I am my ideal client, and I only wish I found me when I was going through it as well. And I think all the mistakes I made, and that's the thing, when I coach now, I don't only kind of look at it from a professional basis with what to teach them and how to help them. I've been where they are. I know what it is like. I can imagine, you know, it's not just me sympathizing with them. I have been exactly where they are, and I know why they are doing what they are doing, because I went through those emotions myself. And for me then it was kind of what I wanted to come up with was a signature system to help people heal from narcissistic abuse. So when I first started, it was very generic divorce coaching, and I still do that anyway. But what I found was, because I was my ideal client, and people started to read my book, which obviously was going through that whole sort of narcissistic abuse, I was getting people asking me more and more about narcissistic abuse. And I'll be honest, initially I was really shying away from it because, you know, everyone's ex is a narcissist nowadays. You know, you break up with someone, my ex is a narcissist, you know, and it really isn't. You know, your ex is just an asshole with stuff like that, really. And there's a real difference with all of that, because it's how you feel. It's that insidious emotional abuse as well. So people do bandy the term narcissist very freely. And, you know, and I'm on a bit of a mission to try and eradicate all of that, really, and get the understanding of what it is. And it isn't just labeling your ex, it's how you feel as well. You know, I often get people saying to me, is my ex a narcissist? And I don't talk too much about them. I say, do you feel like this? And I give them a whole thing, or I'll send them a video about narcissistic abuse syndrome. And very often I get back, oh no, I don't feel like that. Or, oh my God, that is exactly how I feel. And then we can unravel it from that way, rather than your ex-partner. Because then you can't argue with how you feel, because you feel like that, you own that. And there's a real difference with all of that. So for me, it was then thinking about, okay, with the coaching, so I've got a big group on Facebook now, which is just women. I do coach men as well, but women in this space seem to want it to just be women, which was fine. And obviously for me, having the group where I offer free advice, I still need to satisfy something in me that I'm doing something to help these people, because ultimately I probably couldn't have afforded coaching from me if I was back then initially. So I still needed to provide a space where I felt like I was making a difference, something to help them. And then at some stage, if they want coaching, fine, but if they don't, they know they're not on their own, they're getting something, you know, they're learning some skills of how to cope in a scenario like this. So really I kind of ended up micro niching into narcissistic abuse, really, because that's what I know. You know. And then I wanted to formulate something that really was about, how do you heal from that? What do you do? And that's where probably for the last 4 or 5 months I've been doing lots of research about it. So I've created my own program called the Planner Program. So PLANA, so Positive Life After Narcissistic Abuse. And the system I use, it's a sort of 3-step tier where we look at perspective. So perspective is all about understanding narcissism, you know, and there's always a reason. And this was the fascinating thing for me with my research as well, Jules, was that when we're in narcissistic relationships, okay, I can help you heal from that and give you practical day-to-day strategies of doing that. But there was a reason why you were in a relationship like that, okay? Why were you attracted to someone like that? Why were they attracted to you like that? Very often this will go back to my client's childhood. There will be reasons, and normally it's codependency. There will have been something that triggered them in childhood for them to behave how they do. And because I want to help people not just bounce back but bounce forward, it's not just a case of helping them heal from that relationship. I don't want them to get into another relationship like that either. So I need to help them create new boundaries and look at, you know, red flags, deal breakers. But I need to understand why. And very often this goes down to codependency. And just for me as an example, with this, just so people listening can get an understanding. So my codependency came from my childhood. Now, if you'd have asked me years ago, what was your childhood like? I'd be like, oh, amazing. Because it was. We didn't have much money, middle class family. You know, mum and dad sacrificed everything. You know, I've got 2 older sisters. We all got a degree. That's what my mum wanted, you know, because she didn't. So she wanted her 3 daughters to have something to fall back on, which was great. Now, again, my dad, I love him to death. He lives 10 minutes from me now as well. But what my dad was like growing up, and my mum, I realised that they very much shaped who I became, okay? Now, although I thought I had a great childhood, which I did, don't get me wrong, I absolutely did, but my dad has never once, even to this day, said he is proud of me, even now. Not because I probably know he isn't or he doesn't love me, because I know he loves me, but verbally he has never said it to me. Now, when I was growing up, I was a straight A student, captain of all the sports teams. I got on with everybody. I couldn't have been a more diligent and dutiful daughter. However, I never felt good enough. just as an example, which is so insignificant, but became so significant to me growing up, I'd do little gymnastic routines in the lounge, you know, like you do as a child. And I'd be there doing all of the hand actions, cartwheels and everything else. And my dad would be the judge, okay? Now, he would always say 9.99 recurring. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Something so insignificant in the time. And I'd be like, again. So I'd get up and I'd do it again. And he'd be like, 9.99 recurring. It was never a 10 ever. So that set me up for a life of perfectionism, people pleasing, because my mum was very much an empath. So she would be putting her happiness in everyone. If I made everyone else happy, then I'll be happy. And actually, I don't even know whether she was ever truly happy when I now as an adult think about it. So my mum was very much this empath, pleasing everybody else but being unhappy. But that then set me up thinking that's what I need to do. My dad obviously set me up from I'm not good enough, so I need to be over the top with everybody to be good enough, which set me up for my friendships being like that, my relationships being like that, because I never felt good enough. So the people that were attracted to me then could very much control and manipulate me, because I'd keep going. I'd stay. I wouldn't quit. Because if I quit, then I'm not good enough, so I'll stay. So that's what then set me up. And I find time and time again, I get my clients to tell me about their childhood, their relationships with their family, cousins, friends, boys, girls, as they get older. And when I read it, I can immediately see why they ended up in that relationship. But for me to help them heal, to move forward, I need to unravel why they did that, why they felt like that. It's not their fault, but it's their responsibility then to move forward. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, sure.
You see that.
Do you think that you are now different then with the new relationships that you have? You've got a new husband, you know, you've potentially got new girlfriends around you. Are you now different in those relationships because of what you've learned?
Very much so. And initially, one friend in particular who I'm no longer friends with now, she said I went really selfish because I wasn't giving her everything she needed. I was actually looking at myself. And so it was a challenge, and it was a bit of an audit of who you were surrounding yourself with. And I love the phrase, you know, before you diagnose yourself with depression, look at who you're surrounding yourself with, because that is really, really key. But it can be hard when they're your family in particular. So I'm very mindful of when I'm with my dad, you know, I love him to bits and everything else, but I'm very much more self-aware with all of this now, and I think that's key. It's that self-awareness, and then because you're kind of moving into that understanding, so it's giving people the perspective, then it's helping them step back into their power, because it's the control thing when you're dealing with a narcissist. How, you know, and I help people go no contact like a boss. You know, how do you do that? You know, so there's tools you can use, there's strategies you can use. So it's, you know, I'm not just sitting coaching someone and talking to them and getting them to understand all of this. They need to cope on a day-to-day basis. How do they do that? You know, so I help them with the skills for that. And then the positivity. So it's kind of perspective, power, and positivity. And the positivity comes from the positive psychology. So it's not just helping people go back to functioning, it's helping them flourish. You know, we all deserve to live a happy life. And I use the PERMA H model in positive psychology, which is positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, achievement, and then health. So things like physical activity, nutrition, and sleep. Looking at all of those different aspects. So I give them a PERMA H profile. So we look at where they are now, where do they need to work on, how do they do that, and we look at positive psychology interventions that are proven to help people then move into a more of a feeling of thriving and flourishing as well. And this for me, so although I am a divorce coach, I know I'm equipping people with tools then that they will use for the rest of their life, because let's face it, life is a roller coaster. So they will be able to implement these tools. If people have children, it's such an amazing thing. I often, if they have children, I'll get their kids involved as well. So they'll do some of these things together as a family, because what we're teaching our children is coping strategies and resilience as well, which is a great life skill to be teaching your children whilst you're healing as well.
Massive. And, you know, I've got one son. Most people who are listening probably know about Sam. He's 14 on New Year's Day. So we're coming up to his birthday. And I really now believe everything I've learned is what I now want him to learn at this age. And of course, I didn't learn it when I was 14, you know, as you didn't from your story. So how amazing if we can just give our children just some of these tools without bombarding them, without confusing them, but just gently giving them these tools and these simple lessons to help them be more resilient and go through life as less stressed than we were. Because I think I really resonate with the stuff you've talked about in terms of, I had amazing parents. They were wonderful. They were beautiful. And they did say, I love you. And they did say, I'm proud of you. And yet I still had this need to be the best, to be this, to be better than I was, you know. And I felt that. And I think I took that into my adult life. And as you say, into some of my relationships that are no longer existing. So it's very interesting to look back at why, as you say, the why. I love whys, you know me. It's interesting because actually, unless you uncover those whys, then you can't really address where this has all come from. And I love the moving forward bit too, because you know,
that was key for me.
Yes, we need to not just understand, okay, this is why it's happened, that's great, thank you very much. Okay, so now what do I do next? And also, what do I do when this comes back as a dark cloud to me? Because it will at times.
And I think that's one of the reasons I called my book Divorce Became My Superpower. And I've had some people say, you can't say divorce is a superpower because, you know, divorce is so traumatic and everything else. And yes, it is. But for me, it wasn't the fact of going through the divorce became my superpower. And I thought, yay, I've split up from somebody. It's what it did for me. It made me stop. It made me think, why am I getting a divorce? Why was I in a relationship like that? You know, why looking at my friendships, looking at the meaning in my life, the accomplishments in my life, you know, the positivity, the engagement, you know, all of these different aspects, my health, it made me look at all of these aspects of my life for then me to move on. So I do feel incredible gratitude for going through what I did, which, you know, I'm sure some people are thinking, I'm never going to feel gratitude like that, you know, because there's still a lot of anger and stuff. I don't feel any emotion towards my ex now, positive or negative, because I'm not going to give any of my energy to somebody who doesn't deserve it. And it took a while to go through all of that.
And you've worked through that now and come out the other side to flourish, which is now what you're able to give back as the value that you give with what you do. And that's so lovely. So listen, I mean, we could talk for hours here, Caroline, because it's fascinating stuff. And I think that certainly a lot of the listeners will potentially resonate with your story. I resonate with quite a bit of it, in all honesty. I've had 2 divorces, so I'm doing really well. But then I've also not had a relationship for 10 years. So of course there's the other side of it. So there's probably work I still need to do to flourish in that respect.
I think it's about filling you up first and foremost. So the best relationship you'll work on first is yourself. And then when you're coming from a place, you'll attract the right relationship into your life. I
think that's so true. And that's why in that period of time, I think I have done a lot of work on me. I'm a much better person. I love myself much more than I ever did, you know, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way. Of course I don't. It just means I really do think I'm a pretty cool person. So you're amazing. And that's good. It's a good place to be, isn't it? But before we go, I just want to touch on your 2018 as we're coming to the end of this year, because you and I have both had these incredible year.
I know, I have to pinch myself.
and we've crossed paths a lot as well, which was quite interesting. But you know, you've transpired and become this fabulous person in that divorce coaching world, as you've told in your story, which is amazing. But not only that, you have written a book and published a book, and so did I, which is why I know how hard it is. So that's amazing. So this is Divorce Became My Superpower.
Divorce Became My Superpower,
And you can get that on Amazon via Kindle, paperback.
Kindle. Yep.
Are you doing the Audible? Can I ask
I should do, really. I haven't actually looked into doing that, but I should really do that, because I love listening to audio in the car, actually. So
maybe that's like just another thing for your long list.
Oh my God,
that's my gift to you, Caroline. Let's have an Audible book. But I think the other thing to mention, of course, is amazing win on the National Business Women's Award. which I was at, and you were announced the winner. Tell us a bit about that, just quickly.
Yeah, so I entered the National Business Women's Awards as a new business, and to be honest, because my business was really only sort of 6 months old, I thought, well, I'll do it, and just see what happens. And I got into the final, so I went along on the day, and I totally wasn't expecting to win, to be honest, at all, but I felt really honoured to have been in the final, because it showed me that people were appreciating the work that I was doing in the field that I was doing, and it was something a bit different, using the positive psychology as well, and and then of course I won, so I was absolutely amazed, and absolutely thrilled to bits. I really was, and I felt really humbled with everybody else that was there. But it was just, for me, it was the recognition of that it was keep going, keep doing what you're doing, and it is, I feel like I'm on a mission. I feel like I've got a cause, yes, it's my business and I love the coaching, but I feel like it's something inside of me. I can't not do this.
Yeah.
I know that I'll be doing this in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, because I can't not do it. I can't not try and help people through this, because it nearly broke me, genuinely. And I've always said, if it wasn't for my 2 children, I would not be sat here right now. I was in that dark and lower place. I really was. Which
is really quite serious stuff, isn't it? And there's a lot of people out there who are very easily in that place, still in that place, and you can help them. And that's why it is a mission. And I get that. I believe I have a mission. It's not quite the same dynamic as yours, but my whole sales mission is really important to me, because I think so many people are scared of sales, and it's the absolute hub of their business, And
you're right, because even for, say, my business, Jules, and, I said this to you, it's very difficult, because I need to sell my business, but my business is very vulnerable, and it's people's, lives. And so it's that balance between selling it, but it's getting the mindset of, I need to get it out there. And I think it's like how you coach with all of this. It's the way you think about it and everything as well. Because let's face it, everything in life is selling, but it's the word, isn't it? Everyone gets scared of the word selling.
It is. And I think you said something earlier in the podcast where you talked about the fact that you were your ideal client, and this is really critical for you when you're selling, because of that, I will trust you. Because of that, I will know you really do understand me. You're not just trying to flog me something that I might not want. You truly know how I feel emotionally. Now that's the connection. And this is sales. And that's how I always talk about sales. So hold that thought, because you're the ideal client, and you were that ideal client. That's where you will connect with your customers and your clients. And that's why it won't be selling. It will just be complete connection. And that's magic. That's sales magic right there. That's what it's all about. So listen, your award, amazing. I was actually one of the judges in that, which I was completely honoured to be doing. But the lady sat next to me at the table, who was another judge, said to me when you went up, that lady's application was amazing. And I think that's what you have to hold on to, all of these thoughts. So, I know you're not necessarily striving to be this perfectionist any longer, because you've learned about what that's all about. But the fact is, the reason you win awards is because you do something that's just that bit more outstanding than the others. And I think, that's well deserved for the year that you had last year.
It's also sharing your vulnerabilities as well. That's why I wrote the book, because people would look at me now and think, oh, it's all right for you. You're confident, you're this, you're that. And I genuinely wasn't that person. I am completely different now.
Yeah.
For me, I just want people to understand that, and I've said to a few clients recently, I wish I'd almost had a video diary of me going through all of that, because I know literally most people would be like, oh my God, I can't believe that was you. I can't believe it. I can see you, but I can't believe it was you, because that's how I was. I was a shell of who I was. I'd completely lost myself, literally, because of this insidious emotional abuse.
Yeah. And an amazing, inspiring story, I think, to give all the women out there who are going through this, or even just starting to go through this, or even 10 years into this, because, I've been 10 years out of my divorce, and it's still not that plain sailing at times.
It isn't. If you've had a high conflict divorce or someone who doesn't want to let go, there's always this level of control and manipulation sometimes, and that can be really hard to handle. If you're somebody where you just want everyone to get on, you want everything to be nice, you want all, and if that's the person you are, sometimes it's recognizing it just isn't going to be like that. But how do you manage your emotions knowing it's not going to be like that, so you're not kind of tearing your hair out all of the time?
Exactly. So tell us where we can find you. I will put the links in with the podcast anyway, but tell us the best place where we can get a hold of you, Caroline.
Okay, so obviously my website, which is www.carolinestrawson.com, and there's a form on there. I do free discovery calls for people as well, so if they want to have a chat with me to see how I can help them, that's absolutely fine. Also on Facebook, so I've got my business page on Facebook, which is Caroline Strawson, Divorce and Positive Psychology Coach. I do a regular Sunday night live for free as well, where it's always around a subject matter, so that will be something about helping you, and that's free. I've also got a private and free group on Facebook called Divorce and Breakup Support After Narcissistic Abuse, so come and join that, or just friend request me, pop me a message. I'm very open. I get lots of messages, but I do my best to reply to them all as well and direct people in the right place, because I know some people haven't got the money. So obviously they go into my group, which I try and get everyone in there anyway, because it's a really great support network for people. They know they're not on their own. Then they've got my video every Sunday night that they can watch, or on my YouTube channel, I pop them on there as well. And then obviously I do one-to-one coaching, and then I'm starting group coaching in the new year as well, which I'm really excited about. And then I'm also writing an online program as well, literally my planner program from start to finish, and I'm going to keep it really affordable with payment plans, because I want this to be in people's hands. I want people to have a toolkit of how to recover that they can go back to and watch again, and all of those. So those are my plans. So I've got my free group, I'll have my one-to-one coaching, group coaching, and then just a standalone online program that people can have as well. So it's hopefully budget-wise for people, there will be something that will suit you with all of that, because even if it's just a tiny thing to help people move forward, I want to be able to do that.
That's amazing. And also you have your book, so obviously
absolutely, and I'd love to write another one as well. Actually, I'd like to do some self-help books then. I wanted to start with my story, because I wanted people to know I was genuine and authentic, and I'm not just somebody in the space that's just going to do all of this. I wanted people to know that I've been there, I've been through it, I've come out the other side, and I want to hold your hand and help you throughout the other side and everything as well. So that is on my agenda, probably, definitely, because I wanted to be different in this space as well, and that's definitely where the positive psychology comes in as well, because there's nobody actually globally doing what I'm doing with positive psychology either. So.
Yeah, sure. Amazing. Well, look, it's been so great just to hear your story, your journey, all the things you've learned. It's been really, really good to hear it all, Caroline. So thank you so much for being my guest today. Obviously, I'll put all the links in for the listeners into the podcast. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and now we are on Spotify. So whatever your chosen preference is of how you want to listen to the podcast, I will be back again. I'm going to be recording more of my podcasts over the next couple of days, actually. So we've got some for the new year, because on the 6th of January, I travel to Boston, which is super exciting for me because I'm going international. So I will be back really soon with episode 20, and it only remains for me to say to you, ta-da for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.